Welcome back to She Can, where role models inspire. I'm so excited to have Allegra Patrizi back. Allegra, welcome back to She Can. You are a C-suite powerhouse. You were a CEO, a CTO, a CRO for really big corporates, and you're also a speaker and now the author of this incredible new book, Care Dare Share, which we have here. And I'm so excited for this to be out. Lead and Thrive with Heart, Mind, and AI. So, Allegra, we're going to dive into what you call the rationality mirage that so many leaders fall for, how blending heart, mind, and AI is the real key to transformation. Allegra, so tell us a little bit more. What is the reality mirage and why do 70 to 80% of transformations fail in the future?
Absolutely. So you see, the rationality mirage is believing that you can rely on spreadsheets and dashboards to tell you all about the situation. And that if all your indicators are green, somehow you're going to be very successful and lead a fantastic transformation. The reality is that a transformation is about moving people. It's not about creating change. It's about creating a movement of people. It's about creating an aligned energy where all of a sudden thousands of people, hundreds of people, how many people you have in your company or how many customers you have, start really going all in the same direction. It's passionate, not going to move mountains and people with data and spreadsheets.
Yeah. Which I love because I think that's absolutely right. And you have introduced the Care, Dare, Share motto, mantra, manual. It should be a manual for everyone, not just in business, but in life in general. Tell us a little bit more about this mantra, how it came about with all this experience that you have in leading positions in C-suites.
Yeah, so I grew up in very brain-driven professions. I was a consultant at one of the major consulting firms. I had read engineering at university, so I had this idea that I would succeed through my brain. And then over time, I realized that the brain is a very important thing, but it actually has limitation because it doesn't create passion. It doesn't create transformation. It creates the right answers, of course. But once you have the right answer, you need to start getting that with your entire organization, with your entire team, with your customers, with whoever you need to apply that answer to. And that takes heart. And it really dawned on me when I became the CEO of Aegon in the Netherlands. It was the first time it was a woman. It was the first time it was a foreigner. I could barely speak Dutch. I had very broken Dutch. And I realized I am not going to move the thousands of people of this organization just by, giving them the right answer and preaching from a pedestal. And I realized that the first thing we had to do was actually to start listening to our customers, to start listening to our employees, understand which, and also start co-creating. So this is where it all was born. This whole idea of caring deeply for what people have to say, caring deeply for what they're feeling, caring deeply for what they're going through. Because at the end of the day, behind every customer, every employee, there is a family, there is a person. It's much more than just a name, a role, or a policy in that case, because it's an insurance company. And then we had the courage to start taking the right decisions. Not a million priorities like many people do because it's the easy thing to do, but actually accept that we would focus only on those 4, 5, 6, 10 that would really make a difference. And then we started really sharing. I accepting with great vulnerability what was going well, what was going not well, doing that from the top. I myself stood up in several town halls saying, this has gone well, this has gone less well, here we're happy, here we're a bit fearful, etc., etc. And once the leadership starts showing vulnerability in a controlled way, of course. It's not about creating a big drama, but it's about showing that you're human, showing that you reflect, showing that you're taking the feedbacks. Well, all of a sudden, something extraordinary happens, because the combination of the care that has created the trust, the dare that has created the courage, and the share becomes the exponential transformation of the organization. And that is what I saw at Aegon, the Netherlands, and I took with me for any other job, whether it's an executive or an executive job, that I've taken with me, and that I decided to write this book about.
Yeah, amazing. Allegra, you as a woman have thrived in very technical, male-dominated rooms for a very long time. Was there a moment you felt pressure to wear that cold rationality as a suit of armor? And what was the cost of parking your heart at the door?
So, by background, I'm Italian, so I tend to come with a bit of livelihood. My name means happy, and I'm the mother. So, of course, there was a big emotional streak in me, but it's true that for many years I thought I shouldn't show it too much. Uh, but in a way, you can't hide yourself so long. And the other thing is, in reality, why should you hide yourself? Everybody around you is a human, is actually going through exactly the same thing as you are. So we may as well try to really understand each other and try to understand what is it that we're fundamentally solving. Because once you really care, i.e., you really listen and you really trust, the answers are so bloody obvious. And the prioritization of those answers is so bloody obvious. And all of a sudden, the whole organization aligns around those priorities. And it becomes, from the most senior to the most junior person, a complete obviousness of what needs to be done, the speed at which it needs to be done, and the willingness for everybody to participate and help in doing it. That is where, as I always say, data informs, humanity transforms.
Yeah, it's such a strong statement, and I love it. So your care, dare, share mantra is really something that you've put as a book, and it's a manual, and you go into each detail. So it's really very easy for people to follow that and to find that transformation. It's a brilliant book, Allegra. Tell us a little bit how you help women leaders, especially, to show that vulnerability and that care framework where we are often labeled as too emotional, or there is still the saying emotions don't belong in the boardroom. And how can we reframe this narrative into something that is empathy, or more empathetic, and really, quite frankly, a strategic superpower, which is what you outline in this book?
Exactly. So, look, empathy is a foundation of trust, and trust accelerates everything. Trust is very difficult to construct at the beginning, but trust accelerates everything. So, it's really worth taking that effort. So, I don't think it's particular to women. I think there's a lot of people there that have a natural empathy. They just somehow didn't necessarily think it was the right thing to express it in certain settings. And I hope this book gives them the sense that the whole idea is not to separate rationality or technology or empathy, but actually bringing them together in an extraordinary cocktail that really allows to, what I say, move away from managing change and start leading a movement. And it's that moment where the magic happens, where all the forces are aligned, where the energy is aligned, and where the trust is really shared across the teams, across the people, and between the leaders and the rest of the organization. That is where all the strengths of the organization decouples in the sense of multiplies by 10 or 100 or a million. And that is an extraordinary feeling. Not later than yesterday, I was having lunch with a very senior chairman in this country. And he said, how did it feel? And I said, it was the most exciting feeling I've ever felt. When you have thousands of people saying, yes, we understand, we agree, we feel part of this, we trust each other, we trust what we're doing, and we're going to do it. Yeah. At that moment, there is no personal agenda, there is no fear, there's none of that anymore. It becomes a huge force, all directed into doing something great. It's an extraordinary feeling.
Yeah, it's amazing, Allegra. It sounds like you do sort of open heart surgery to companies, and you you help them have a really alive and beating heart again. Now, you use a fantastic term in the book, potato language, which you describe as simple shared words that everyone can connect with, moving from corporate jargon to something that's comforting and warm and accessible. So, in a world obsessed with these complex frameworks, it feels radically simple. Tell us a little bit how you felt that this potato language was effective.
So, you're completely right. At the end of the day, caring means listening, means establishing trust. And it means also, of course, being able to talk to each other at the level that we feel what we're saying, not hiding behind very difficult concepts. Now, you can use simple words to express very well thought through ideas. So it's not because you do potato language that it is sloppy language. So, for example, in one of the companies I led, we had created 5 very specific sentences that we reminded ourselves all the time to say, these are the 5 things we need to do in this situation. One of them is, we will keep rats out of the kitchen. And it became so viral. And basically all it meant is, whenever we see a problem, instead of playing what many companies do, which is email ping pong, i.e., you say you've seen the problem, somebody else says that he sent an email to somebody, and then it keeps on ping ponging between emails and nothing gets solved, which happens in a lot of large companies. We said, no, now this is like seeing a rat. We wouldn't stand still if a rat passed by here, right? It doesn't matter that, maybe the people in charge of the rat wouldn't be here. We would do something. And so we said, look, it's like in a restaurant, whether it's the cashier, the cook, or the person that serves. If there's a rat, they're of course all going to take a broom and take it out of the restaurant. Otherwise, they have no business left. And so we basically started doing that with ourselves. And the interesting thing is that in every meeting, you started having people say, no rats in the kitchen, guys. And it became so viral that even the CEO of the group talked about it at the level of the entire group, not just the country we were in, and said, this is a fantastic way to make everybody feel ownership of it and feel the importance of it.
Yeah.
Another example of potato language is, you see, many companies have often the sense that customers are a distant thing. Of course, everybody talks about customer centricity, but in reality, certain roles in the company may have a feel that customers are a distant thing. And one day I took, a lot of people, a lot of employees, and I said, guys, how many customers do we have? And they said the number. And then I said, how many families are there in this country? And of course, they gave me the whole population. I said, no, I didn't say the whole population. I said number of families. And of course, it was a marginally bigger number than our number of customers. And that made them realize, basically, that what I explained them is, look, next time you do a barbecue, you need to realize that John and Susan and Mark that are sitting around you at the barbecue, and that are sort of the 3 houses, 3 friends, whatever it is that your children are playing with, are actually, for 2 or 3 out of 4 of them, the clients, the customers that we are serving every day. So it's not a distant concept anymore. It becomes a real reality. Sorry for the no pun intended. And all of a sudden, it's through these simple hunches where you connect to actually the intuition and the heart of people, that you can get all of what you've put in their head completely connect with each other. And all of a sudden, the transformation becomes unstoppable. They understand why is it that they're doing what they're doing. And not only they understand, but they become the promoters. And then you can stay there and let the organization basically really get through what it needs to get through. Because frankly, even as a CEO, you're only one person and you only have the power that the organization allows you to have. So as a one person, you're not going to make big transformation. You need to engage and get everybody with you to make those things happen.
Yeah. Amazing. What an incredible model for super connecting everyone inside and outside. Allegra, so in chapter 5, you talk about the leadership shift from hero to orchestrator. That's a huge challenge usually for high achievers who really want to be the ones who are indispensable problem solvers, right? So tell us a little bit more about that. And when you realized that specific moment where you realized that you became the sort of emotional bottleneck for your team.
Well, I realized it when it was a week during one of my C-level roles, and basically I think I had 17 meetings in like 2 days or something like that. And of course, on one hand, I was very proud that people were seeking advice, help, etc. But at the same time, I remembered that famous expression, which is, if you want to feed a family, don't give a fish, teach them how to fish.
Yeah.
And I thought, in a way, that's basically what I need to learn. I am naturally somebody that has a lot of energy and enjoys, of course, take charge. But I have to say, Allegra, if you want to be helpful to this organization, you will need actually to step back and accept that you move from being in front to actually being the chef d'orchestre. We have La Scala in Italy, so that's a stronger image for me. But basically somebody that could not do the music on his own, but actually the whole orchestra wouldn't be able to do the music if there wasn't that orchestration. And so basically it's about entrusting, empowering everyone to perform this care, to start owning the emotional agenda together with, of course, the data analytics, etc. agenda, the classical agendas, so that they can start empowering their own team. And the whole transformation starts taking more and more movement and shifts from change to a movement.
Yeah, which is very powerful. Allegra, the great thing that I think you do in the book is that you always come from a place of where you learned this, and then you give examples, not only of your own experience, but companies that illustrate what you're saying. So the Zillow story that you share is sort of a chilling cautionary tale of daring with data, but failing to care for human wisdom, costing them $500 million. Tell us a little bit about why that is such a strong example.
Look, it's a first of all, I feel for that leadership team, because I'm sure that they had a lot of good intentions, and in a way they were the first ones really applying AI. So in a way, their story is a lesson for everyone. But I'm sure that they were just a bit unlucky, to be honest. It's a very well known story, but essentially it goes that they had planned to really put down to analytics predictions around the market in the US in order to buy and sell houses. And in a way, those analytics were extremely powerful, but of course they failed, as often analytics do, to seize the moments where there would be shifts in momentum. And essentially shifts in momentum are very often due to the fact that next to the whole rational and greed and all of the animal spirits that everybody has, there is fear, or there is a feeling of this is becoming too much. And I am sure that in that boardroom, because I've been in similar boardroom discussions, you have this terrible tension of saying, look, it seems to be going so well, but is it too good to be true? And at a certain moment, that's where you need to probably start taking into account the context and the emotionality of what's really happening. Trees don't grow to the sky the same way that holes don't get dug until the other side of the earth. Everything comes back somehow into a balance. And one of the key leadership thing, which is also caring, is to understand where is that right balance for an organization, for a market, for consumers, for whatever it is. Where is that right balance? And you only can get to that if you're willing to tap into your own emotionality and the emotionality of others, because you cannot tap in the emotionality of others if you don't accept yours. People saying, I never have emotions, or I'm not an emotional person. No, that's not true. You're a human. You are emotional. I understand that you may have been brought up saying that. But in reality, it's actually a beautiful barometer, a beautiful GPS that we as human beings in ourselves. And it actually feeds what we call intuition. And if you let it help you, combined with clever data and clever analytics, is really going to make a difference and stop a system that is going out of balance. And that is probably, in essence, what has happened to Zillow. They went out of balance, and it costed them a lot of money.
Yeah. Allegra, and that's something, of course, that in this revolution of AI, lots of humans fear. And so the points that you make in this book are very, very important because it takes that fear away. And we as humans who are the sort of, masters of this universe, we can then use it for the ways that we need to and that actually make life and business better. Allegra, in the share section, you talk about breaking down knowledge islands.
Yeah.
Right. And so in many companies, knowledge is power, and sharing it feels a little bit like shooting yourself into the foot. And so how can we use AI not just to connect data, but to create a culture where sharing intelligence feels more valuable than hoarding it, which is really something most people do in this day and age still?
So AI in that case, it's a very good question. AI in that case, and in every case, is basically just a tool. So the first thing that needs to shift is the mindset, is wanting to, if you want, take a little boat from one island to the other, or even better, to create a bridge, or even better, to slam the islands together. So that's the first thing. Now, in the old world, of course, that required a lot of mindset, but then in the end, you were still limited because you couldn't put your data necessarily very easily together. Now, the beauty is that if you have that mindset of breaking down the silos, really sharing the learnings, figuring out what you've learned, what has gone on, etc., and how you can improve, then all of a sudden you have this extraordinary tool called AI that can take all those snippets of learnings and actually help you distill connections that you hadn't thought of. And that I find extraordinary. But it all starts with a set of humans that are saying, we are adamant that we actually want to use this learning. And our intuition is that this learning could be in this and this and this aspect. Because just throwing a data lake at AI is going to tell you a gazillion things, of which 99.9% actually you don't really care. So you always need to keep the perspective. It's not just the tool, it's what you're going to do with it. And that's where, again, in care, in there, and in share, the human needs to be squarely at the helm, guiding this, harnessing this extraordinary power that AI brings, but never letting that power become the runner, not because of all sorts of, Machiavellian ideas, but simply because it lacks the context, it lacks the emotionality to really take all of that into account. So I think in the world that we're in, where AI is going to provide more and more speed in something like memory retrieval and things like that, the two huge assets that people need to have are going to be heart, i.e. humanity, i.e. ability to move people, and experience, because experience means ability to create the right intuitions at the right moment and understand when a system, even if it looks like a perfect system, is about to go out of balance. Because everything at some point goes out of balance, and everything at some point needs to be slightly nudged back. AI is like a wonderful power. It's like when I sit in my car can do things that certainly none of my legs can do. But if I were to forget that I'm in charge of that car, I would probably go very quickly into a wall. So AI is the same thing. It's an incredibly powerful thing. But the human needs to remain with care, with dare, and with share, in control, and use it as a fantastic tool.
Yeah. Amen to that, Allegra. And I love that you said it takes experience, because exactly, we always think we're sort of born with this intuition, but intuition is like a muscle that we need to train. And we only know once we've trained it and we've used it over and over again and dared to use it, then we know when we can trust it and when it's ego and when it's intuition. Allegra, you include the Care Dare Share Compass, which is amazing.
Yes.
So everyone can really self-assess, which is
Yes.
brilliant. So if you had to plot your own leadership footprint on that compass when you first became CEO at Aegon compared to now, what would you say is the most dramatic shift?
I would say, look, I was somebody that was all in the dare, and very little in the care and in the share. Growing up as a partner in a very large a large consulting firm, engineering. I was all in the dare, to be honest, all in the analytics, etc. I had courage, but yes. And then I realized, as I was growing up, way before I became CEO of Aegon, that if you want to transform things, you need to start opening on the care. And then if you really want to have lasting impact, you also need to master the share, which is in a way the acceleration of the transformation, the self-fulfilling impetus of the transformation. And for me, the biggest effort has been, of course, in allowing myself to care and to visibly care and accept to listen and create that trust. Of course, we all say we want to listen. We all say that we want to have trust, but it takes a lot of give and take in order to establish it. It takes time. It takes a lot of time to do it. And in a fast-paced environment, you may say, "Oh my God, we just need to take decisions. We just need to move. I just need my dashboards to be green." And I learned it slowly. And then when it really hit me is when the transaction that Aegon was going to be sold to ASR arrived, because in a way, as a CEO, you've actually lost the strategic agenda in a way, because that will be set by somebody else. Yeah. And so all you're left with is care and share. You become the coach of the entire organization. Yeah. And for somebody that had been growing up on her brain, all of a sudden, I had to be CEO for a year, maybe a bit more, knowing that I wasn't owning the answers anymore. Yeah. All I could own was actually this sense of creating the right emotional context for the organization to arrive at the day of the merger in the best possible shape that organization can have, yeah, as opposed to give in to the natural fears, etc., that would occur in such a situation. And I remember telling everybody, we will be the best version of ourselves. We've done extraordinary things, and now we will hold each other strong, and we will continue doing even more extraordinary things so that all of you can enter that organization with the best possible version of this company and of yourself. And that is the best trajectory you can have. And you know what? We did exactly that. We never gave in to fears. And that felt very magic, with that energy of helping each other and keep on transforming, even though we knew we were being sold. Actually, because we knew we were being sold, that was a further impetus. That was a fantastic moment.
Yeah, I can imagine it, and I feel it right now when you're talking about it. What an incredible space holder, and what an incredible space you built for people to be able to hold that vision.
And that made me realize that no intellect will ever give you that feeling. Yeah. That you get that feeling when you really create a system that has psychological safety, that has trust, that has respect that has humanity at its core. Because I even saw it with my horse. So in my book, one of the endorsement is actually done by my horse instructors, because in a way I started riding at 40, and so, which is very late. And honestly, I couldn't ride, and I still can't ride. I'm very, very wobbly. But at the same time, I decided that I would really create care d'ashare with my horse. And, probably even the horse said, "Oh my God, who's this bag of potato that I have on my back?" But and he was a young horse when I got him. And together we really started caring for each other, daring to do a little step more and a little step more and going to new places. And then when I would fall, when we would get something wrong, yeah, well, we would spend half an hour together talking to each other. Of course, he talks in a different way than me, and saying, his name is Luke, by the way. Luke, what should we have done differently? What do you think? I should have, helped you there, and you should have helped me there. And you know what? We have this extraordinary relationship. And I thought, this is actually care d'ashare. It's a very big animal who is much more powerful than me. But together, we've done things that none of the two of us separately would have ever done. And we reached the international level, which is something that when you start at 40 is just impossible.
Unheard of. It's unheard of.
I'm still very wobbly at the international level.
It doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like that. You look like a daredevil on this horse.
So it's, as I was saying, there is something about a bit of a magic mix. But I would also say something else. I've come to believe that in order to create those extraordinary transformation, as a leader, you also need to have a lot of generosity. And that generosity, it doesn't matter whether you're in a corporate environment, in a charity, in something else. People will feel that generosity. And it's not generosity, financial generosity, but it's basically generosity in believing in them, in taking the risk with them, for them, through them, in thinking what is going to really make a difference to their life. That is a generosity. And when people feel that generosity, which is deeper than respect, because it can even come in the form of tough love, right? Tough love is still love. But that's the generosity. You are willing as a leader to put yourself a bit on the line and to take, in a way, a hit, because generosity is always giving something and therefore not taking it for yourself. That people start really believing in you and establish trust. And that's when the movement starts taking its own velocity and becomes like an avalanche.
Allegra, which is why I think that this book is a fantastic book. It's really a manual for people to incorporate into their lives, not just their businesses. So you make this powerful statement, which you mentioned earlier: data informs, humanity transforms. So in this revolution of AI that is getting exponentially smarter by the day, it seems, are we being a little bit romantic here and clinging on to this notion of why our humanity is so important?
No, I really don't think so. I do think that, so over the last 9 months, I've spent so much time programming AI, talking about AI, leading with AI. So it's not as if I'm an AI skeptic or of any kind. But no, I think the combination, the strength is in the combination of the two, which is why the book is called Lead and Thrive with Heart, Mind, AI. If you only do it with heart, only kumbaya type of style, that's not going to work either. You need to bring these three things together. You need to bring your heart, you need to bring your mind, and you need to bring AI. AI is a very powerful accelerator, but it needs to know what it needs to do. Otherwise, it becomes a lot of platitudes and a gazillion concept that honestly you can't do anything with it. But at the same time, if you only go with heart and mind and forget AI, it's as if I was telling you I would like to go for this weekend in Milan from London, and I've decided to walk it because that's how they did it in the Middle Ages. Equally not fantastic, because by the time I've reached Dover, it's probably already the end of the weekend. So you need to combine those three aspects. But, having something very powerful that you cannot really direct because you don't know what you want to really do with it is equally useless. So heart and mind give you a sense of what is it that you're doing, where does the experience count, and then AI is the is the power that accelerates that transformation dramatically.
Yeah. Allegra, so many of our listeners tell their stories, they share their insights, and many of them try and implement really big changes, both personally, in business, in their careers. And a lot of the times, this transformation feels like pushing a boulder up a hill rather than sort of something that's in the flow where you manage change. So tell us a bit more how you manage, how you can stop managing the change and really start leading the movement. What is the secret sauce that gets people to change that on its head and really lead a movement, start a movement, lead a movement, follow through with the movement?
It's you know what, I've thought about a lot about this question because that's what I tried to articulate in the book, but I also realized that I probably don't even fully know it myself, because it's a subtle mix of care, of dare, and of share, which basically means of listening, of daring to take the decisions and living with the decision, and then having the vulnerability to accept what went well, what didn't go well, and to just take full accountability for what's going on. It's very hard to say what needs to happen to every person, but what I've seen is that the first part, which is both the caring and then the sharing, feel very scary. And so probably a lot of people, don't feel comfortable with that. And therefore they stop just a bit too early in giving themselves to the cause. And that's why it feels like a bit of a boulder. So I would say what I tried to do and put in the book is little exercises that try to help you push yourself that tad bit further in a controlled and safe environment, so that you can try to get a bit further. Because at the end of the day, I think the difference between a transformation that stops as soon as the leader stops pushing and a transformation that continues is this energy that the system has created itself. And for that energy, there needs to be a bit of an ignition in the beginning, and that ignition needs to come from the leader who is willing to take a bit of a personal risk, one that he or she can live with, but a personal risk in starting. That feels very scary.
Allegra, so tell us who you wrote this book for. Who do you want to go out and buy this book? It's out now as an ebook, I believe. People can look it up. It started today. I think Pub Day was today. Tell us a little bit around your emotions of putting this out into the world, and who is this for?
Today, who is, by the way, also the birthday of one of my children. So that's why I chose this day. At around 3 a.m., I started getting the messages that the systems were grinding and the book was starting to percolate. It takes a few days to go through all the wheels and through all the systems. But yeah, it started today. Yeah, so I'm very excited. Who have I written it for? You know what? I've written it for anybody that wants to lead a transformation, be it in business, because that's what I know more, but also on a horse, because that's what I've seen, also in a fintech, also in a political setup, also in a charity, or anything. Because in reality, this is about bringing rationality, passion, heart, and a shared humanity all together in pursuing a purpose. So whoever has a purpose that they believe in, probably will find a source of inspiration in this book. Of course, the examples are based mainly on my experience, which happens to be the corporate world, but in reality, you can very quickly see parallels in other aspects.
Allegra, I want to congratulate you. I'm so unbelievably proud of you for putting this book out into the world. It's a manual that everybody that listens here can go out and buy, care, dare, share, make it your new operating system. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.